Hi, everybody. So my name is Jamie. I am here from Soul Script Coaching. I work with writers. I'm a book coach and a writing coach. I help people write their memoirs so that they can find healing and so they can um, help others in the world through their story. And I am very, very honored and very excited to be here live with you today with this incredible woman here that is next to me. Hopefully, you can see her. This is a woman who I met just a few weeks ago and have been learning about her whole adventure and story. She is an award-winning author of 5 books, working on her sixth. She is a filmmaker and producer, award-winning filmmaker and producer, and even started even before then. So when she was 23, only 23 years old, she actually started her very own marketing and ad agency. And I don't know if you can imagine, like, a woman just breaking glass ceilings left and right all the way through. It's just amazing. And so she spent 20 years in the marketing and industry and wrote her books and is now producing films. She's working on I think what you said, it was a $60 million uh, massive film. Think Aaron Brockovich, The Next Generation, right?
Yeah.
And you actually said you had spoken with Aaron Brockovich. She's actually helping you with this film too. So many great, very cool, exciting things that are happening in this woman's world. This is Jill Murphy Long. I am so excited to introduce you. And yeah, Jill, thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me to talk to your writers and any other new writers tuning in. I'm happy to share what I've learned so they can have a jump start on their writing journey.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, we very much appreciate having you here. Awesome. Well, so tell us a little bit, Jill, about your writing, your career and your journey as a writer. And I know you wrote 5 books, and 3 of them were nonfiction, and then two were fiction, right?
True, true. Yes. So I loved advertising, but I lived in Southern California, and that's where I met some of our people that are tuned in, like Deborah Hayashi. And it was great. I loved living there for 19 years. However, the traffic got crazy and we were raising our daughter. So we picked up and moved to the Rockies, Colorado Rockies. Beautiful country. And with a lot of snow, all I could do was ski or write. So that's when I began. I got my first contract. I had gone to the San Diego Writers Conference. We can talk about that later. Contests are good, conferences are good because they give you a deadline. And that way you don't take 10 years to write your memoir or your book. You can, but I would advise maybe moving through it a little quicker and writing your second book. So at the San Diego Writers Conference, I was fortunate enough to do my homework, and we can talk about that later, find a literary agent who then signed me and then found a publishing house for me. So that's when, let me show you. We'll do show and tell so I don't talk the whole time. Um, so my first 3 books, and a lot of my friends made fun of me. They bought me a beret and bought me a Starbucks card. I quit advertising and said I was going to write a book. They're like, uh-huh.
You gotta
And then
have the
they
full
were,
persona.
yeah, but they were very supportive and came to my book parties and bought books. So Permission to Nap was the first book I wrote so I signed a 3 book contract. And then I wrote Permission to Play. And then I wrote Permission to Party, which you can see it changed. So I'll talk to you about continuity and being really strong in your book proposal or your vision from the get-go. So I wrote those 3 books. And back then, I told my agent I wanted to write a novel. And she said, no, 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 you're a nonfiction. You're a creative nonfiction writer. You can't write a novel. And I'm like, okay, don't tell me I can't, because I will. So I did. So I wrote, I wrote Skiing with God, which I can't find the book in here, but I also wrote The Conduit. And I have adapted this recently to a screenplay, which I'm also pitching to Hollywood. But Hollywood's Hollywood. So advice to writers, keep writing, because you can't really control where it goes. But the good news is in today's day and age, you can reach your readers. You can publish an audiobook. You can find an agent and a publisher and get it printed as a hardcover or soft cover, or you can write and publish an ebook. So there's so many ways to reach your writers now.
Yeah. And you don't have to be limited to one genre. You can write in many different ways.
It just made her job harder because she had connections to publishing houses that only represented nonfiction and creative nonfiction. So that's why she told me not to. So again, sometimes people make comments, and when you are rejected, and you will be, it's because it just doesn't fit. So the biggest thing is to do your homework first to make sure that whoever you're pitching has done similar books to you.
Mhm.
So it opens up your chances of being picked up, of being represented by an agent and or a publisher.
Oh yeah, no, that's great advice. Yeah, and just to keep writing and keep getting out there. And um so that's interesting. So your first agent, it was your agent you were talking about, who she had those connections to the nonfiction publishers. How did you find her? How did you go about getting involved with her? I know a lot of people, they're in the writing world. It's so divided sometimes about when it comes to publishing, whether you choose to be a self-publisher or if you go with a hybrid publisher or you go the traditional route. But I think a lot of people are afraid almost now to go the traditional route because they're said, well, if you don't have a platform and an audience of 10 billion people, nobody's going to even look at you, which is a valid, concern. But there are ways to do it, and there are smaller publishing companies,
Right.
and an agent can often help you with that. So, how did you make that decision to go there and then to find this person that you worked with?
So I went to the San Diego. Well, first of all, I started the writers group. I met with other writers. We all brought 10 pages, and in the coffee shop or someone's living room, we'd pass our 10 pages to the person beside us, and they would read our work aloud. So that was amazing to hear your work read aloud. So we would take turns, 2 hours, we'd go through all these scripts, 5 to 7 people, and I'm still friends with a lot of them today. And some of them have published, some are now into art and poetry, etc. So find your people, like you helping them. That's great to have some accountability. And then we discovered, then I went back to college, I went back to night school and how to write a novel and just got the idea, the structure, how do you develop characters? What are your plot points? How do you write a book? So that was interesting, very good. And then I found a writers conference that was close by. I was living in Orange County at the time. So San Diego was feasible. So three of us drove down there 3 years in a row. First year was just exciting. I'm like, oh my God, we're at a writers conference, meeting other writers. And second year, did it again. And the third year, I'm like, you know what? This is stupid. What's my goal? I need to publish. So most writers conferences list all the agents that are coming. So I sat down with an editor from Simons and Schuster, because you can pay to meet, kind of like speed dating, but you need to have your elevators pitch. What is your book about in one sentence? And then tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And then print a one pager, an overview with perhaps your ideal cover information, how to contact you, because you can hand it to them. This day and age, you can also email it to them. So anyhow, I did my homework and I knew who was coming and who I wanted to speak to. And Elizabeth Pomada, one of the agents, was there. It was one woman that represented work like I do. So, and how, backing up, how do I know who these people are? My first assignment for your viewers today would be go to a big bookstore. You can do this online, but it's better to pick up the book. Go to your section where your book will live. And maybe do your homework initially. And you want to look at books that were published in the last 5 to 10 years, no more than 10 years. And then go to maybe your library or your bookstore and find those books. And then look at acknowledgments, because in there they thank their agents. And then you also see who published it. So now you're starting to piece the puzzle together. And then you can also look on how big are these books? They 300, 400, 200 pages, and just a lot of information. So a standard manuscript formats, 1 inch margins, typically in Times New Roman font, 12 points, double space with indentations.
Yep.
You can use other fonts with feet, but basically why they do that, it's math. So if you have a 400-page manuscript, when they take it down to a book size, whatever book size they decide is best, they want to look at how thick the spine is. So you have where's my book? You have um, some presence on the bookshelf if it sells that way. But also 400 pages, the rule of thumb is you minus 20%. So that would be 80 pages. So your finished book, manuscript pages 400, finished book would only be 320. So
Mhm.
based on that, they can figure out how much it's going to cost. So look at the price points of the books that are similar to these. Write down not what it's selling for or discounted on Amazon, but what is the suggested retail price? Because cut that in half, and that's what the bookstores buy it for. And that's what you get paid on. 10, 12.5%, 15% of that wholesale price, not the suggested retail price. So the bigger your book, the more they can charge. And unfortunately, until you sell like 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, you start at 10%. You don't make 15% off the whole time. And 15% is the top you can make. Stephen King, Barbara Kingsolver, all the big names, they still just make 15%. So it's
Yeah.
not quite fair. Again, the writers, the creative people don't make the money they should be making. That's why it's important to maybe publish a hardcover book and an ebook and an audiobook. So now you have three different sources of revenue. And then there's also the speaking and engagements going out that you can also be paid to speak on your subject matter. So anyhow, I went to the conference. They had a panel and introduced everyone that was there. So I'm, taking additional notes, like I need to start the guy that has a beard and glasses and writes, and so I can find these people, whether I see them in line, I go to their, because they gave talks too. You go to the talks and then you hang around afterwards before and try to pitch your work. Deliberately sat beside Elizabeth at lunch and pitched her idea because she went around the table. What's your story about? What's your book about? Um, and then I was in another talk and I went with two girlfriends. So Ruth outside the window waving and waving. And I'm like, what? Finally, the woman speaking stopped. She goes, somebody needs somebody's attention. So Ruth opens the door and she goes, literary agent Elizabeth Romano wants to talk to Jill Murphy Long right now, and I'm in her session. Can I take her there? And the woman goes, of course, this is what happens at conferences. So I
Oh my
went. So it was kind
gosh,
of like
how
a Cinderella.
exciting.
Yeah. So I walked in the room and she goes, Jill, I read the one pager you gave me at lunch yesterday, and I want to sign you as a client. So that was like, hooray. So I signed a 3-book contract. Definitely have an experienced writer look at your contract. I kind of signed away a few of my rights, but I was so excited about having a contract. I didn't have a lawyer or anybody look at it. So anyhow, then I went on the journey with Elizabeth, writing. I had 6 months to write and then promote, and then the next book and the next book. So it was a busy 3, 4 years.
So it happened that quickly. That's amazing. And also, if you're working with me, we've talked to Joseph Perry, who's a great literary lawyer who can look at stuff like that. So can get you some connections there. But so it happened that quickly. You went to this writers conference with
In
the intent to publish,
in April,
and and you knew some of the people, and so you knew of Elizabeth. You'd seen her in.
I just did research. So Literary Marketplace is a really good website. People can look and key in agents by names or et cetera. Google is a great resource too. You can also Google publishing houses that publish memoirs without agents, memoir literary agents, and they sometimes it will say no submission, so don't bother. And some of them say don't submit multiple, but it's your career. I'm sorry, submit multiple, because otherwise you wait a month to hear back from somebody, and then
Yeah.
the next month, so your life is just passing before your eyes. So don't tell them you're submitting to multiple ones, just do it.
But you had
um,
actually submitted to her right that day, and then that same day she said she wanted to work
Next
with
day,
you.
yeah, it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday conference, so it's very exciting. You can also go to a lot of other conferences and speed date. There's one here in Portland, Oregon, where I live now. The Willamette Writers Conference. Willamette's the name of our river here, and you can pay to sit down with an editor or an agent and pitch. Um, that's a little nerve-wracking for some of our writers, even myself, I'm rather extroverted, but when you sit down to try to pitch your own story, I could pitch your story all day long, but my own sometimes. So just practice with friends. And
Yeah.
you can also go online and pitch. They have a lot of pitching things, but be careful. Make sure you do your research and make sure that they are legit, because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of vanity presses that will be like, oh yeah, we'll publish your book for $5,000. No, it shouldn't
Mhm.
be that way. You might have to hire a designer to design your book. If you go on Amazon and do it yourself, I would spend the money doing that, but do not pay someone to publish your book.
Yeah.
They're called vanity publishers and they're out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of them for sure. And yeah, they're their whole other thing. Uh, so it's the idea that if you self-publish, you can still pay people, to be a book coach like me or an editor. You
Yes.
definitely want to spend the money on an editor, a cover designer, those kind of things. But
And
there are ways to do that
it's
where
not,
you save your rights and you're not
yeah,
paying somebody else
right.
to do
And
it
it's
for you.
not that, I mean, I published on Amazon. It's not that hard. I also worked with some of
Yeah.
my actors and they were my voice and they read Permission to Nap. Jill Segru, an actor up in Washington, read my pages and that's up on Amazon as an audiobook because my publisher said back in the day, oh, we don't believe in ebooks. They'll never take off. And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, so can I have the rights to do that? So they gave me those rights back because they didn't believe in the future. And they're in Chicago. So my agent was in San Fran. I was in Orange County. Then I moved to Colorado and had to finish the book. I had 6 months to finish the book. So when you pitch, make sure you're ready to hit the ground running. Don't say I'm ready and have an uncompleted manuscript because that's just too much. As a first time author, that's too much pressure on you.
Very stressful, yeah.
Yeah, so don't do that to yourself because you want it to be fun and creative and you don't want that weight on your shoulders. And then my publisher was in Chicago and my editor was in Connecticut. So we're all over the country. But it was really fun. I'm glad I did it. And then because my agent actually died in during the
Oh no.
pandemic, horrible.
Oh,
So
I'm so sorry.
yeah, so I kind of did the novels on myself. Skiing with God's a niche book that I wrote because I love skiing and I raced in college and taught skiing at 4 resorts and ski patrol. So I'm an avid skier. I love it. So I wrote that book for me and for my skier friends. And then the conduit, though, I do hope the conduit, the other novel I wrote, I do hope to have that produced as a feature film. So
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. So, so these writing conferences, and even if you do pay a little bit up front, so sometimes writing a book, it is an investment, and I talk about that with a lot of my writers too, is that sometimes it's an investment because you are creating a product and you are working as, writing is a business. So sometimes it does involve a little upfront investment, certainly in time and all of that, but paying even to just sit down with an editor or an agent at these conferences is very valuable, it sounds like,
yeah.
and it can lead to great opportunities.
Yeah, so just and again, I did a little research before we got online, because some agents with a memoir in particular. Okay, let's go back up. If you're writing a novel, you have to finish the whole thing before you start pitching.
Hmm.
And the numbers, unfortunately, they publish more nonfiction than they do fiction. So your chances of getting a novel published is a little
Really?
tougher. The Bible is the number one seller. Self-help is second. Cookbooks follow because they people love to eat or like to have cookbooks on the shelf, and then it goes nonfiction, then fiction. So not that said, still write, believe in yourself,
Yes.
believe in that you'll get it done. As my husband always said, set low goals and be an achiever. He's a sub 4 miler, so he's kind of lying, but it's true. Write a page a day, and then other authors have said this because a page a day is a book a year, 365
Hmm.
pages. And some days you'll write 10, some days you'll write zero. But make room for your practice and make it comfortable. Light a candle, drink tea, play music, play no music, put a sign on your door. Shh, my husband always comes in. What's for dinner? I'm like, I'm writing because you can't be
Writing.
interrupted. If you're
Yes.
if you're balancing the checkbook, no big deal. But if you're in the middle of like a scene and you're, 1940 and he comes in, you're like, oh my, what?
Yeah,
So
it needs to be approached as your own business. Otherwise, if it's just a hobby, it happens when it happens. But if you really want to make it happen, it becomes your business, and having that date with yourself of, okay,
yep,
so hey, I'm in a business meeting with myself for the next hour and I'm
yeah,
writing.
yeah.
Nobody bother me.
I used to
Um,
say that's what I would say. I have an appointment or a meeting. People are like, oh, okay. But if I say I'm writing, they stop by. I'm like, or I'm have to lie to you because no one's respecting my now because I wasn't published. Now I'm published. Like, oh, she's writing. She's writing.
yeah.
Never answers the phone. She's writing. And I'm not sometimes, I'm reading instead. So just keep a good balance. Always keep living. Some writers stop and don't edit your first draft. Just write through it
Yes.
because otherwise you'll be stuck on chapter 12 forever. Just finish
Mm-hmm.
as we say, the first bad draft. And then because your editing brain and your free writing brain are two different brains. It's a little different when you're writing nonfiction, as I'm doing now. Plutonium Skies is a book I'm writing. And it's also based on the screenplay and the TV series Powerhouse that I'm pitching actively in LA right now with two producers. But so I write the narrative, I write the story, but then I'm like, oh, I got to double check, fact check that point, and then I get sucked into Google all day. So maybe just put research, put the wording and keep writing. And then tomorrow go back and review what you wrote and fill in the blanks and do the footnotes if you have to, or double check the name of the school that you're talking about or whatever if you're writing your memoir. So, okay, so nonfiction, finish the whole manuscript. Nonfiction, which includes memoir. Some agents want to see like 3 chapters, not necessarily the first chapter, because they know you'll rewrite that and rewrite that and rewrite that. So some
Yes.
chapter in the middle, maybe up to 30 or 50 pages, that has to be done. They also want an overview. What is your book about in one page? And that's about 250, well, 500 words is on a page, roughly, depending on how you lay it out. They want your bio. So again, if you get stuck writing, then go write your bio. Go write your marketing piece of what your memoir is about. Please, please, please Google your title make sure there's not 400 other references that your buyer can't find it. I worked in a bookstore one summer in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and my book was on the radio. My publisher thought for whatever reason it was great to advertise books on the radio. So I had a lot of interviews, which was really fun. You could sit in your bed in your pajamas and talk to Chicago, LA, Florida. But no one would remember because there was no visual, the name of the book or my name. So I was working in a bookstore. They would come in and go, "Oh, I just heard," and they didn't know who I was. Um, I read this great book about rest and relaxation. I think it's called Permission to Rest and Relax. And I'm like, "You mean permission to nap?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." So anyhow, or they would come in and go, "I heard a book about angels," and so make it simple. So make sure that your title is simple. You can have a subtitle, but make sure the title's simple.
Yes.
Make sure it's available. Google Amazon under books, Google, and just check it.
Also, go to the trademark, UPTSO, I believe it is. Always check those trademarks because you never know what is
Oh,
trademarked
what I
now.
learned is you can't trademark a copyrighted title. You can trademark a series like Chicken Noodles Soup for the Soul. And I should have done permission to dot dot dot, but I didn't.
Mhm.
It costs money. It's $750 to $1,500.
Yes.
So I didn't do that. So you can't even the big Hollywood. I mean, if it's a series, Marvel, etc., you can trademark that. But if it's a title, you cannot.
Yeah, no, I meant like say you say the duct tape of my life, right? Duct tape is actually a trademarked name. So
Oh, oh, oh,
even though we
gotcha.
think I was actually having this conversation with my group last night too. We were talking about how, we want to say the Kleenex, but Kleenex is actually a brand, so you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
use
It's a
that
huge
without
issue. Yeah,
being
we have
aware that
that
that's
constraint
trademarked.
in film too, because they want you to pay to play if you're going to use Pizza Hut or what have you. Yeah, and your editor should be able to advise you on that. Your literary agent and publisher has a legal department. So, but again, yeah, do the homework for them so they don't have to. So with nonfiction, normally you write a nonfiction proposal.
Hmm.
So what's your table of content for your book? What's the front matter? What's the back matter? Who are you thanking? So look at that's why when you go do your homework about any book, you're taking all information down. You're looking at the books to go, okay, I like that, I don't like that, I'm going to do that, I'm not going to do that. So you can start
Yes,
to
you
put
want to be
together your idea.
familiar
Yeah.
with your genre for sure.
Yeah. And then put it aside. Put them because it's your book, it's your point of view on the world. So put that aside, forget all that, and don't compare yourself to them because they too started same place you did. Everyone was a first time writer,
Yep.
author,
And what you
aspiring author.
see on that published shelf at Barnes and Noble or whatever large or small bookstore, independent bookstore you're looking at, it started off as a crummy first draft that everybody was like, "Oh, that's the way it's supposed to be." You don't want to compare to the final product that's already
No,
gone through
just be your
agents
best,
and editors
your
and all
own
of it.
cheerleader and keep going. But yeah, there's books on how to write non-book proposals or stuff online. And I've written three, four. I'm working on one now for Plutonium Skies. But just so the other piece of advice, I also I wrote some short stage productions that won and were produced. It was really my first ever play, but it was exciting to see it produced and filmed. And I actually sat in the audience and that gave me my first taste of like, I've always wanted to make movies, but at 19, I was like, I'll just go into advertising. That's safe. And then I'm like, all right, I can't do advertising anymore. All I'm doing are billboards on the 405 freeway with 3 words or annual reports. So that's when I got into writing stage plays and then eventually scripts. And now doing a lot of short scripts that we can put up on our YouTube channel for Left Coast Comedy quickly. So anyhow, the idea is maybe you want to have a small second product. I know Newsweek is looking for human interest stories and they actually pay and they want 1,500 to 2,000 words. That's a chapter. That's a short chapter. So maybe you write that and then you can make it work. Then you can say, as seen in, that's how Tipping Point started. Maxwell Gladwell, his first article was in the New Yorker. And then from there,
Ooh,
he got a book contract. So there's a lot of ways to get in to being a published writer. Um, so just try them all.
yeah. We do have a couple of questions that have popped up for you.
Okay.
So, one of them, somebody asked, this through Facebook, somebody asked, so I'm just reading through. Going back to when you were talking about the writing conferences, so there's a lot of writing conferences out there that are online now, but it seems like you had the good success by going to one in person. Are there ones that you recommend, or how do you know what is a real writing conference? and a good one that would be profitable, or what's that word? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, worthy of your time. So first go to your bookstore. Go online first. You probably know some books in your head that are similar or books that you aspire to be like. Look who published them. Then this is why you have to go to the bookstore, because they usually don't list their acknowledgement on Amazon. Then go to the bookstore and open up to the acknowledgement page and make a list of your agents and your publishers. Then when you go to look at writers conferences, and look in the future, 6 months out or something, so you have time to get your work done. And luckily it's all online, right? And poets and writers, I think I sent you that link, Jamie. You can go on poets and writers online, and you can sort by type of book. When the conference, they have select, so you can choose what you are looking for in a writers conference, and then go to that website and then open it up and do controlled find, and then maybe look for that agent's name, look for the word memoir, look and make sure that write down what you want. You want an agent that's publishing or representing memoirs, nonfiction, and then what other genres do you have with your book? The one I'm writing now, it's a memoir, but it's also historical, it's environmental, it's political, it's medical. So I have a little more bigger of a band, and it's international. So I hope to be published in other languages. But again, dream big. What's your wish list? Take one piece of paper and write down everything that you want. And then also, when you're doing your homework online on Amazon and or at the bookstore or your library, and the reference librarians are great. So give them some of your homework. And you can go online on their website and go, hey, I'm looking for this, this, and this. So also make a list of your authors, titles and authors, because those authors perhaps could give you endorsements. So you can use that for your social media, you can use that in your back of your cover, etc. And the way endorsements work, though, most authors, if they're published, are too busy working on their next book or they're touring or something. They don't have time to write you an endorsement. But once you're done and you have the one pager and you have a contract, you can, or have somebody introduce you, you can reach out to them and say, this is what my book's about in your one sentence. Here's my one pager. I would love if you could write an endorsement. However, and don't, I'm just talking, make it faster than this. Say, I'd be happy to write some endorsements that you could edit and or rework to make it your own. And that way they get their name on the back of your book, the name of their book, thank you for helping me get started. I'm happy to help promote your incredible work, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of, we help each other. So I've written a lot of endorsements for my other writers that I know, and vice versa.
That's
Because most
amazing.
people don't have time to read a whole book and write an endorsement, and same thing when you go on interviews, TV, radio. I go and talk to high schools when I'm on book tour, other writers groups. The person interviewing you, it's not reading your book, so that you either write the questions you want them to ask you, or you give them bullet points or something. So all
Those
kinds
are
of advice.
Yeah, yeah, those are some great points and great tips. Especially, thinking about, you can ask other people and other writers who are successful to write those endorsements for your book, and that's a great practice to
But
have.
it's all back to do your homework. And I taught creative writing, English, screenwriting, script writing in Colorado and Oregon at colleges. So always do your homework. Who do you want to represent you? So you have to know those answers. You have to know those questions. And that will help you identify what conferences to go to, and even there's even writing contests, and you can see who the judges are. So again, thank God for Google, right?
Yes.
Copy
What
their
would we
name.
do? Where would we be without it?
Oh, I did it way back when. So copy their name and research them. What have they published? What are they looking for? Are they even accepting submissions? And make that hit list of 10 agents, and maybe a second list of 10 more. I mean, you're hopeful that someone will, and I'm pitching this year. So hopefully someone will say yes. And I have my list. I have my piles of books behind me. I check them out of the library once I find the books I want, and then go through them at home, of who I think is similar. But in your book proposal for nonfiction, you're going to do a list of competitive books that they would buy instead of your book, no more than 3, published in the last 10 years. And you want to pick the bigger ones with
Yeah.
Simon and Schuster. Again, the publishing world's getting smaller and smaller, but kind of recognizable names, perhaps. No self-published books, don't list those. Price point, they want to know the size. What's the size of the book? So you put the dimensions. Amazon provides that. The suggested retail price. Always list the hardcover, don't list the soft cover, because you want them to go, oh, this is a book that should be sold for $25 instead of a paperback at $14.95.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
And then
sense.
they want page count. And then under that, you're going to write, the name of the book. For example, one of my competitors is Dark Waters, the movie, but the book was Exposure by the Attorney. So I put that, and I also put a note that it was a movie because I'm trying to get my book made as a movie. And I know some of your writers are also asking, can my memoir be a feature film? So if that's the direction you're going, then I would look for memoirs that were books originally. And normally you start as a book because then the screenwriter has material. They can't tap your brain, but they can tap your book and write a great film. So write your book, and then pick books in your competitive and complementary book analysis that have been made into movies. You know,
Yeah. And
and
oh, go ahead.
I was trying to think of a book that was made a memoir. Angela's Ashes or Frank's, I don't know, some
Frank
Irish.
McCourt, Angela's Ashes,
Yes.
he's one of the big ones. Yeah, and Brain on Fire is one more recently with Susanna not Kaysen, because that's Girl Interrupted, but hers was also
Yes.
one back in the day. Started as a book, turned into a movie.
So that's what
What's
you're
the other
doing.
book?
You're putting all those ideas in their head. I mean, that's what, again, and what I was
Power of Suggestion.
Yeah. So yeah, and I come from advertising, marketing, PR, and that's all I did. So this book, I really knew Permission to Nap. I knew the cover. This hangs in a museum in Puerto Rico, and then all the chapter openings were other beautiful artwork. My mother was an artist, was a tribute to her, but it costs money. So the arts, this is $500. The other ones are a little cheaper inside, but they take. So I get an advance against royalties. Let's go into the math of publishing. So let's just say, they pay me X amount of dollars to write the first book and X, one, two, three for 3 books. So I have a 3 book contract, which also means, let's say they gave me 50 grand to write this book. I have to sell enough books to pay back my advance before I see any royalties off of that. I did not know I signed a joint accountability. Same thing with this book, beautiful artwork in it. So I had to sell out all 3 books of what I was paid in advance before I saw any royalties. This book, by the time the 3rd book came out, they're like, you know what? It's costing too much for art. So we're going to use clip art and we're going to change the name of it. And they didn't tell me this until I already submitted the manuscript. So they called it Permission to Party. And the book was about permission to eat. I had just come back from Europe and the way they eat slowly. And it's just so
Yeah.
lovely, little amounts, unlike here. So my husband and I fly back into Dallas, Texas, and they're like, thanks for coming in. Here's the menu. Here's your food. Here's your bill. Like in 20 minutes. And we're like, oh, this is horrible. Because we're so used to sitting, having a leisurely dinner for 2 hours or more. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Very
wasn't, because I
different
was,
culture.
yeah, so I was trying to write the book so quickly and meet their deadlines they just decided to do this because now I'm a product and now they're saving money. So unfortunately, the 3 books didn't look alike. So that kind of pissed me off, to be honest. Because
And that's something that if you have a good literary lawyer that would check that, you could ask for somewhat kind of rights to be able to approve title and copyright, but that's not common a lot. You definitely
no,
have to have a good lawyer
and they
to
would,
hold on to that
but
kind of
but
right.
then you're spending 3, 4, 5 in my industry in film, $900 an hour. So you can just talk to your agent and editor. But the reality is, they're like, well, this is what we're going to do, and you can do it or not because
Hmm.
it's a business. So
Yes.
the other thing you have to watch for too is I forget the legal terms. I'll think of it later and text you. But they this industry books, so Barnes and Noble, or here in our town Powell's Books, or the bookstores at the airports, can order a case of your books. And normally, please ask for a case of your books. It could be 20 books, 60 books, but it's really exciting when I got my 60 copies of Permission and Have and open it up, and I was like, oh my god, all my hard work, here it is. So I was able to give them out to media so I can get interviews and such, because that also falls on you, or some family members who helped me a lot. So it's kind of a thank you, and then to keep a set for myself because it'd be nice to have that. Um,
Yes.
but what I was going to say is, let's just say Barnes and Noble, even though there's not a lot of those left anymore, they can order 5 cases of your book for Christmas time now, and then in March send back whatever doesn't sell. So there's this floating decimal point. Are there 25% of books out there that are going to be returned? So they don't pay you royalties on that. So my number was too high. It was 25%. I should have asked for like 2% or 5% because I wasn't paid on books that maybe were sold or not. So, and most interesting, if you sell bananas to Fred Meyer's or grocery store, they don't come back. That's it. It's a done deal. Or books they can send back. So
Hmm.
we're one of the few industries that allow that. It might have changed, but I don't think it has. So that's rather annoying.
Yeah, no, I worked I actually did work for Barnes and Noble for 5 years, and just a couple of years ago, as a part-time job, just for fun. And yeah, they definitely did. You know, if a book was not selling, it was sent back, and you wouldn't get the money for that. And if you weren't published with a certain publisher, it was very difficult to get your book on
Yeah.
the shelves. But that is actually an interview I'm working on getting as how to get onto the shelves even if you're not with a big name publisher.
Yeah.
But
So
it's a lot of footwork.
yeah, on you, on the writer. The other thing to
Yes.
consider is that I'm not sure how prevalent this is now, but they used to produce catalogs. So I had to, get my author photo and I had to write, which is probably better. Sometimes there are people write your blurbs, but it's better if you write your own blurb about yourself. But if you're on the top of the alphabet, like my book's Permission To, I'm below M. So when they sit down face to face with major buyers, libraries, colleges, bookstores, airplane gift shops, they don't get through the whole catalog, especially if you're at this, because each publisher has a catalog they put out every season, spring, summer, winter, etc. So you probably saw those in your day. So it sometimes helps to be in the front of the catalog. So when you're thinking of a title, maybe A, B, C, D, something, no, not A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
literally, but something that begins with an A. Numbers also bump you up to the top of the list, but it needs to be easy to recall. And this is my advertising, marketing, PR, brain talking. Easy to remember. Even permission to nap, I thought was super easy. And people would say,
Yeah.
permission to rest. I'm like, oh my God, no. So,
And everybody loves a good nap for sure.
well, yeah, even though it's not really allowed in America, which is a whole chapter I wrote. And I use the word napping really loosely in the book. It's about just stopping, no paperwork, no housework, no office work, just finding something that you can do for yourself. So it's self-care. It's
Yeah.
having balance in your life. So titles are important, but not really. I mean, if it's a good story, it's a good story. But that's just one little bit of marketing that can maybe help bounce you up higher in the consideration because they don't have a budget. They only buy so many books.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. It never even occurred to me to think about that. Yeah, I mean, by the time they get halfway through the alphabet, you know, they're tired of shopping, right? It's like you
Yeah,
get halfway through the mall and you're like, okay, now I'm
I know.
totally done with
I'm
trying
done.
things on. I either like it or I don't. I'm not gonna even give it a chance
So there's
otherwise.
one other weird thing that you guys should know because we talk about characters, Twitter, we had to write 140 characters and such. But back in the day, Ingram was the big distribution center for
Yeah,
all
Ingram
books.
Spark.
So if you type in your title, they only pick up the first 17 characters, letters and spaces. So mine, Permission To, never really gives the whole title. So really think about your first 17 characters. I mean, I know this is really nitpicky and diving into marketing 101, but if someone's trying to find you, make it easy for them to find you. And also you do need some of the social media. And when I started, my webmaster, my good friend Derek, who I cycled with, he's like, you need to use your name, JMLFilms.com. And I'm like, no, that's so egotistical. I should have done it. Because now I have all these books, I have screenplays, I have films. So now I have a website from Permission Books. I have one for JML Films. It's too convoluted. So
Yeah.
if you have aspirations of going beyond one book, a series, audiobooks, ebooks, screenplays, any of your writing, then make sure people can find you and use your real name, use your full name. And also Google yourself. There's a Jill Long and Jill Murphy running around Portland. So I go to the doctors, they're like, they look at me funny. I'm like, no, I'm Jill Murphy Long because, make sure people can find you. And same thing with my actors. They use all kinds. I'm like, you got to pick one name and stick with it because you want people to be able to cast you in movies or your readers be able to find your book.
That's a really great point in naming and all of that. So much gold that you're offering all our writers and our viewers today. So
We have
thank
four
you so
minutes. Are there
much.
any other questions that we should?
Yeah, so Deborah actually put one in the chat. She says you seem to have a lot of ideas and projects you are juggling. Yes, you are. Yeah. Do you find this is the creative and process style that works best for you and still allows you to stay focused and complete your various books, films, and productions? So yeah.
Yeah,
How do you
I know it
manage it
makes
all?
it sound like I'm doing it all at once, but this is 20 years in the making. Everyone that looks like a success didn't do it yesterday. They've been working on it for a long time. My books came out in two, three, four. I did a calendar on one of the books. I wrote 10 screenplays while I was raising my daughter, and two books. I'm high energy, even when I'm broken. I messed up my knee, so I'm sitting here with my leg bandaged right now. And Deborah knows this. She's known me since before I was married. But I find if I have multiple things to do, then I don't sit there and dwell on my book all day, and agonize over whether chapter 3 is good or should be chapter 7. I have something else to do,
Mhm.
so time projects fill up the time you allow it. So if you don't have a lot of time, you say, I'm gonna write 15 minutes every morning for everyone, before the household wakes up, great. Or I'm gonna write before I go to bed, great. But just make a promise to yourself that you will get there. And whether you write the book talking to your text or your email, or sometimes I use paper and pencil, sometimes I get on the computer. I have a set accountability, whether it's a contest or writers group, an editor, a coach, somebody that's gonna go, is it done yet?
Yep.
To get it done.
Yes.
But I find, like, for example, and I wanted to say this real quick before we go, Left Coast
Yes.
Comedy, we're hosting a screenwriting contest. So it's only 4 pages. So I'm encouraging your writers, anyone, to try it. Try to write a funny short script. Think Saturday Night Live, please no swearing. I try to be creative without dropping F-bombs. And no horror, because there's an industry for that, but be funny,
Mhm.
sarcastic, funny, ironic, fun, super smart. And you can look at our Left Coast Comedy website.
Yep, and you're right on YouTube, right? Left Coast, just type in Left Coast Comedy.
Yeah.
You can see all the different little sketches they've done, and there's some that are really super cute.
So what we're doing is, and maybe you can take a picture of that SO QR code, or we can send you the link.
I
I'm
will,
trying to
yep, I'll attach the
yeah, I'm trying to discover new voices, new writers. So
Yeah.
the top 4 official selections will be read at our table read in Portland, Oregon. You don't have to be here. You can write from anywhere. We'd love you to be here, and I got hotel discounts if you do come in. And then the audience will vote. We'll have about 250 people in the audience. The audience will vote for the best one, and we'll produce that in 2025. So what I'm saying is it's really important to see your work maybe in other formats. And as a screenwriter, any screenwriters in the group, it's one thing to write, but get on set, be an extra, go volunteer for a student film, because then you see the magic. You see how it goes from paper to screen, and you see what has to change. And that's why I'm doing Left Coast Comedy. I'm trying to showcase new writers, actors, music composers, etc., so we can keep practicing and working on our craft on a regular basis rather than waiting for Hollywood to knock on our door and pick you. So always,
That's
always, always
incredible.
practice what you're doing.
Yes, yes, awesome. So, beautiful. So, if you are a screenwriter or aspiring screenwriter of any kind, so it doesn't have to be comedy, or it does have to be comedy.
Yeah, it has to be funny, but in
Yep.
the spectrum of humor, what does that mean?
Yeah, there's
Anything.
so many different
What's
ways.
And we want to represent all types of humor. And please
Yeah.
include a women. I need, so 4 actors, 4 pages, pretty much one location. And all the guidelines are in the form.
Yep,
But I
yep.
look forward,
And
the
we will
judges,
link that, and
yeah,
we'll make sure that there's a link to Jill and all her amazing accomplishments so you can check out her website. And your books are available for sale on your website as well, right?
no, I should
Okay.
do that. They're all
Yes.
Amazon's. Jeff's making all the money and going to Mars. So there you go.
Well, we'll link your books in there too, and there will be a link to this contest. And when's the deadline?
The first deadline, will save you a couple of dollars, is midnight Sunday, October 13th. And then the second deadline is October 30th at midnight before Halloween. And
And it's a
then
really easy fee, right? It's like remind me what that
it's
is.
20 for the early deadline and 30. And if you, and that's why I lowered the price, because if you look at on Film Freeway, there's all these short film festival contests. They start at 45, 50, $80. And I'm like, that's not fair. I mean, so our goal, and we're first year, there won't be thousands of submissions. So there's a good chance that, you can make it. Your chances are a lot
Yeah.
higher, and it's not astronomically expensive. And I plan to do this every year because it's really fun to sit in the theater and hear professional actors read your script and have an audience react. And then, of course, to see the next year, to see your short, funny movie produced with actors and crew and watch it with an audience. It's just amazing. So again,
Yes.
just keep writing, you'll get there. It's everyone's journey's different, but I wish everyone the best of luck, and just keep practicing.
What an incredible opportunity. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we will definitely attach the link to that. And just a fabulous opportunity. And yeah, and so if they want to contact you, they can get in touch with you through Left Coast Comedy or through your website. If you want to talk to me about any book coaching, anything like that, I'm Soul Script Coaching, SOUL, Script Coaching. And you'll have the link to that as well. I help writers get your book written, right? I'm the one who does the accountability you're talking about, Jill, right?
Yep.
Get you going, keep you going, get that book written. And yeah, you've given us so much today. I appreciate it so much. I mean, going to writing conferences, talking to the people, having your elevator pitch ready. You talked about how to set up the even thinking about your title. So much gold that you offered us today. So thank you so much for being with us here. Anything else you'd like to? Any other questions in the chat? I'm just checking. I'm just double checking on
Well,
Facebook.
she's
See if
checking.
there's.
Definitely read. And I always read nonfiction when I'm writing fiction, and I read fiction when I'm writing nonfiction. Don't always read what you're writing because it gets in your head, and then your editor's going to be like, I hear someone else's voice in this. So maybe mix it up. If you're a screenwriter, please watch any movie with the subtitles on, with the captions, because you hear it, but if you're reading and hearing it, you'll learn to write dialogue better and not be so what they call on the nose. So watch as many movies as possible, go to film festivals, volunteer to be on a film set. You get paid to be a background extra at a ball game or in a bar. So it's really fun to see how the big boys and girls play with the cameras. It's just really exciting. So just somehow try to capture that and keep the hope alive because you will get published. You'll get published one way or another.
And no, you don't have to be in those big cities to get those opportunities either. You know, people are producing films everywhere, and there's a lot of smaller companies that are doing that too. Like I'm in Syracuse, New York. We're not that big, and we're way far from New York City, but we have our own producing company, American High here. Um, and so you have opportunities. There's opportunities out there. You just gotta get out there. And as you said, I love what you said. You gotta live your life. You gotta live your life.
Yep.
All right. Well, anything else to add today? Last
Um, Nope,
words of wisdom?
I'm gonna go right today. It's Friday, but I'm
Yes.
gonna get an hour in. So I encourage or I challenge everyone else, can challenge, encourage everyone else to do the same if they
Oh,
can.
you know what? I'm gonna challenge everybody else. I'm gonna take to that level.
Yeah, you
We
be the
challenge
heavy.
you. Yes, yeah. That's the curse to me, right? We challenge you. Write 1 hour today. Get 1 hour written, and just keep going on with your dream because it can happen. And just look at all the success Jill has had, and just keep going forward because you take advantage of the opportunities.
Well,
So
and the world wants to hear your voice. I mean, stories are the fabric of our society. And right now, more than ever, we need that to bring us together and not divide us. So please write your story. I mean,
yes.
there's an audience for you. I know there
There's
is.
always that's the first thing, and there's always somebody who not only wants your story but needs your
Right,
story.
right. And a lot of memoir and self-help is you write for yourself first and then you find. And that's what my three books were all self-help. And I wrote them for me. I didn't know how to nap. I didn't know how to play more than like I should be playing. And I didn't know how to, well, it was called Permission Day Party, but I was talking about eating and making celebrations out of life. So I wrote them for me and they helped me a lot when I transitioned out of advertising into being a full-time writer. So write it for you, write it for someone else you haven't met yet. And we'll be, if your book goes to the big screen, call us. We'll be there.
Awesome,
Jamie and
wonderful.
I will
Yes,
show up
yes.
and be
We
there at
will
your
be.
premiere.
Yeah, we will love it. We'll be cheering you on in the audience and very excited for y'all. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us in Zoom land, in YouTube land, in Facebook land, all of the places. And thank you so much, Jill, for joining me. It was such a pleasure getting to talk to you today. And we'll sign off today, okay?
Right. Thanks for the opportunity. All
Yeah,
right.
thank
Take
you. Bye, everybody.
care.